The internet's dark corners hide chilling secrets, and sometimes those secrets involve missing persons, or much worse. I never expected that my curiosity about the dark web would lead me to something so horrifying, something that still keeps me awake almost every night. What happened didn't just change how I see the world. It tore a hole in whatever sense of reality I once had. Tonight, we're diving into 3 unsettling true stories from the dark web that will leave you questioning the safety of the online world. So stick close and keep watching till the end to find out what happened, before it was too late. But before we start, make sure to subscribe or follow so you never miss any new chilling releases. If you're enjoying the content, hit like, drop a comment, and share this video. Let's see how many of you truly love this kind of episodes. But there's a little twist. One of the stories you're about to hear isn't real. It was completely made up. Watch till the end, try to guess which one, and leave your guess in the comments. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And now, let's dive into the darkness together. If you're reading this, you're probably familiar with the term dark web. But what most people don't understand is that it's not just an area of the internet for illicit activities or where one might find the shocking and strange. The dark web is a place filled with things that defy understanding. Things that, once discovered, are hard to erase from your mind. My friend Max, the name changed for his privacy, and I weren't searching for the usual disturbing content. The kind of dark things you hear about. Unusual videos or eerie images that disturb the mind. We weren't looking for those deep web mysteries that some say capture the worst parts of human nature. What we wanted, however, was knowledge. We were searching for hidden truths, answers that had been deliberately kept from the public, things that no one was meant to uncover. We were hungry to learn more about the world we lived in, and to find proof that there was more to this existence than meets the eye. For months, we scoured encrypted websites and obscure forums, delving deeper into the labyrinth of the dark web. And one fateful night, we stumbled across something that would change everything. It was a forum called Occult Knowledge, and within it were discussions about ancient wisdom, mystical practices, and rituals that had been kept in the shadows for centuries. The more we read, the more intrigued we became by the forbidden topics: witchcraft, spiritual rituals, and sacred rites that had been hidden from public view. And then we discovered a post that stood out from the rest. It was titled, "The Seeker's Rite." This post detailed a ritual, one that supposedly allowed a person to summon a powerful entity, one that would show them a level of knowledge beyond human comprehension. But the warning was clear. Once you saw the truth, it would never leave you. The visions would haunt you forever. At first we laughed it off. It sounded too outlandish, like some sort of tall tale or elaborate hoax. Sure, we believed in the supernatural to some degree, but this? It seemed like nothing more than a story. But as we continued reading, something about it felt genuine. And then we listened to an audio file attached to the post. The voice wasn't human at first, foreign, guttural, and strange. But then, the voice shifted into English, and the words it spoke sent chills down our spines. "Your mind will never grasp what is beyond. Remember 2033, when the truth will be revealed." That was the turning point. I don't know why, but we decided that we had to see for ourselves if the ritual was real. We had to test it. We gathered the necessary items: candles, a symbol drawn in red ink, verses to recite, and most importantly, a small amount of blood. According to the ritual, one participant had to offer blood. A coin toss determined who would be the one to bleed, and, in the end, Max was the one who had to cut his palm. There was a moment of hesitation, but we moved forward. The ritual had to take place exactly at 3:15 a.m. We made sure everything was prepared. As the clock ticked toward the critical time, the room grew colder, and a strange sense of anticipation filled the air. When the clock finally struck 3:15, we lit the candle and began the chant. Max held his hand over the flame, and with a quick motion, cut his palm. The blood dripped down, soaking into the flame and snuffing it out. For a few moments, nothing happened. The room was silent. We waited, but all that greeted us was the smell of melted wax and the feeling of disappointment. We thought that maybe the whole thing was just a hoax, a trick to scare the gullible. We went to bed, hoping to forget about it. But then, as I lay there in the darkness, I heard it. The sound. It was unlike anything I could describe, a sound that seemed to echo from someplace deep within the earth. I opened my eyes and froze. Max was sitting up on the couch, his body stiff. His eyes were rolled back into his head, and his mouth hung open as if he were gasping for air. I rushed to him, but as soon as I touched his shoulder, I pulled back in horror. His skin was burning hot, his body trembling violently. Sweat dripped from his face as his body convulsed. Was this some sort of medical emergency? I didn't know what to do. I reached for my phone, but before I could call for help, everything stopped. Max's body went completely still, and his eyes locked onto mine. And then, in a voice that was no longer his, a voice filled with an unsettling calm, the same words from the audio file echoed through the room. Your mind will never grasp what is beyond. Remember 2033, when the truth will be revealed. I was paralyzed with fear. Before I could react, Max collapsed to the floor. I rushed to his side, but before I could check for a pulse, he suddenly shot upright again. His body shook uncontrollably as he screamed, a scream full of terror and confusion. His eyes were wide, filled with an emotion I couldn't place. He looked around the room, his face pale with fear. I tried to calm him, to ask him what was happening, but he couldn't speak. His eyes were wide with terror, and I knew, deep down, that whatever had happened was tied to the ritual we had performed. I didn't understand what he had seen, but I could feel it in the air. A shift, something unexplainable. I called for medical help, but when the paramedics arrived, they found nothing physically wrong with him. They assumed it was some sort of panic attack or mental breakdown. I didn't tell them about the ritual. I couldn't. They wouldn't understand. A week later, I received a call that I never expected. Max was gone. He had taken his own life, hanging from the ceiling in his apartment. The image of his lifeless body is forever burned into my memory. I can still see his eyes, those eyes full of fear, haunting me, even now. I don't know what he saw that night, but whatever it was too much for him to bear. The words, "Remember 2033" ring in my head every day, like a clock counting down to something inevitable. I live with that date in my mind now, dreading what will happen when 2033 finally arrives. What was Max shown that night? What did the ritual reveal that changed him so profoundly? So, if you ever find yourself considering exploring the dark web, let my experience serve as a warning. Some things are better left untouched. Some knowledge is better left unknown. Trust me, it's not worth the cost. "5 years ago, my life was painfully average. I was a registered nurse working at a public hospital in a mid-sized city in Eastern Europe. I had debts, bills, and a persistent sense that life had no intention of cutting me a break. But back then, I never could have imagined I'd be part of something so sinister, something so heavy that it still claws at my conscience. It all started with Dr. Eric Sabo. Eric was one of those brilliant, almost mythic doctors whose name you'd expect to see in academic journals, not posted on the cracked wall of a government-funded hospital like ours. He had lectured internationally, had credentials from Switzerland and Japan, and was a former head of surgery at the most elite private clinic in the country. Everyone gossiped about why he left it all behind to work with us, underpaid, overworked, and in a hospital that smelled like bleach and hopelessness. I never spoke to him personally until one day when he summoned me. Not through official channels, he called my personal number and invited me to lunch. We met at this quiet restaurant that I didn't even know existed, tucked behind a nondescript pharmacy. Strangely, there were no other customers, just the staff, all of whom greeted Dr. Sabo like he owned the place. That was my first red flag. He asked me simple questions at first. where I was from, whether I had family, debts, loans, health problems. Then he dropped the real question. How much money would you need each month to never worry again? I laughed awkwardly, gave him a number. He looked at me seriously and said, "What would you do if I paid you triple that?" I felt like I was falling into something I didn't understand, but my father once told me that you don't ignore opportunity. It might never knock twice. So I told him I'd consider anything, as long as I knew what I was getting into. He leaned in and began to explain. There are 2 doctors I work with. They only operate with certain nurses. When one of them delivers a stillborn, the protocol is simple. One nurse alerts the second doctor. That doctor then delivers another baby, a healthy one, but convinces the mother it was stillborn. Both babies are taken to the morgue. That's where you come in. I was frozen in my seat, my hands tightening around my glass. He continued, "You're connected in the morgue. You can move unnoticed. Your job is to create a duplicate file, one for the actual stillbirth and one faked, matching the ID for the second mother. You show both families the same deceased infant. After the identification, you take the living baby out the back exit to a black van. Same driver, always, tinted windows. You place the infant inside, walk away, and return like nothing happened." My brain couldn't keep up. I was repulsed, terrified, and curious. I asked, "What happens to the baby?" He ignored the question. Instead, he said, "Look, I used to make $3,000 a month at my old hospital, but I gave it up because this is more lucrative, much more. After I pay the doctors, nurses, and you, if you join, I still keep $4,000 minimum per baby. I don't ask what they do with them. I don't want to know." I could feel something dark settling inside me. But the truth? I needed money. I had rent overdue, medical bills for my mother, and collectors who wouldn't stop calling. So I said the words that changed my life forever. "I'm in." I didn't realize it then, but that lunch sealed my fate. I wasn't working directly with the dark web, not technically, but Dr. Sabo did. He moved the babies. He had contacts online. I was just a link in the chain, one that made $300 a night for dirty work. It felt awful at first. I cried the first time I handed a living baby over. But guilt has a way of shrinking under the weight of desperation. Over time, I adapted. Some weeks I'd earn over $600. Other times, I only had to help with naturally deceased infants. Those paid less, but I felt less like a monster doing it. The system was smooth, efficient, and horrifying. That is, until one night, everything collapsed. I was walking out the back door of the morgue carrying a tiny, lifeless body wrapped in a hospital cloth. The usual black van was waiting. I didn't even glance at the driver anymore. I just did my job. Then, suddenly, gunshots. The van screeched and sped away. Before I could run, I was grabbed, gagged, and shoved into a white vehicle. For 3 hours they beat me, my face swollen and ribs cracked. Eventually, we arrived at a remote house. They tied me to a chair. What they did next, I won't repeat. I lost track of time and of myself. I was barely conscious when a man in plain clothes introduced himself. Agent Tomasz of the National Cybercrime Unit. "You've got 2 options," he said. "Help us or walk free." I didn't understand until he explained. If I walked out, Zabo's people would know. They'd come for me, and they'd finish what the van couldn't. I made my choice. I worked with them, helped them gather enough data to infiltrate parts of the trafficking ring. I'm still doing it. That's why I'm alive. But I know the clock is ticking. When they don't need me anymore, well, let's just say I won't be allowed to write my own ending. It began in the quiet stillness of my apartment, staring into the glow of my computer screen. I had recently learned to navigate the dark web, a place whispered about in forums and encrypted chat rooms, where forbidden corners of the internet waited for those with the curiosity and skill to find them. It was there that I discovered the Arena. At first glance, the site resembled a typical video sharing platform. complete with likes, comments, and enthusiastic viewers. But its content was unlike anything on the surface web. There were only a handful of channels, each hosting its own twisted version of a game show. One imitated Big Brother, locking contestants in a windowless house, subjecting them to inane challenges. But unlike the television show, the loser wasn't evicted. They were sent to the basement. What happened there was never shown, but the way contestants reacted afterward, shaking, weeping, sometimes screaming into the night, made it clear. The basement was a fate far worse than elimination. Another channel echoed Wipeout, complete with oversized obstacles and impossible jumps. But it was set in pitch blackness or dim industrial lighting, always cloaked in shadow. If someone failed a jump, they didn't bounce and laugh. They plummeted into a bottomless void, their screams trailing off until they ended in an awful, unmistakable crunch. Despite the horror, or maybe because of it, I was hooked. Everyone assumed it was fake, just twisted performance art. Deep down, maybe I did too. But I couldn't stop watching. I joined comment threads, bet real money on contestants, even argued with regulars like a devoted fan. Over time, I developed a reputation. My predictions became eerily accurate. People noticed. And then, one day, a message appeared on my profile. You've shown exceptional foresight. For the finale, pick your winner. If you're right, the reward will be substantial. I picked a contestant and submitted my bet, excited for the outcome. I was wrong. That's the last thing I remember before the world went black. When I came to, I was bound to a chair in a dimly lit room. Figures in garish, grotesque masks moved around me, dousing me with a heavy liquid that clung to my skin. The smell turned my stomach. It wasn't water. It was animal fat. Thick, oily, rancid. "What are you doing?" I croaked. One of them turned toward me. "You're a candidate for the game," he said flatly. "What game?" I asked, already fearing the answer. "You'll see," he replied. Then they released me and vanished, leaving me in silence. The only sound came from beyond a closed door, a distant cheer, swelling louder. I didn't want to open it. I hadn't volunteered. I was a spectator. I was safe behind a screen. But now the crowd's cheers were turning to shouts, anger, impatience. I scanned the room. It was small, claustrophobic, with 2 air vents far too small to crawl through. Only one way out. The door. Heart pounding, I opened it. A flood of light blinded me. When my eyes adjusted, I found myself standing on a raised platform, facing 3 others, contestants like me, all slick with the same grotesque coating. One, a woman in her 20s, was visibly trembling. Another, a man in his late 30s, looked disturbingly calm. The third, an older man, stared blankly into space. Then came the voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's special event. We've brought 4 of our most dedicated viewers to compete. They've wagered, commented, and predicted. Now they get to play." The crowd roared, unseen but deafening. Our first challenge, the classic red balls. "Brooke from North Carolina, you're up." The young woman stepped forward, paralyzed. "5 seconds to move, Brooke," the announcer barked. She didn't budge. 0, very well. A panel behind her snapped upward like a springboard. Brooke was launched forward, screaming, before vanishing into the void. Then came the thud. The audience erupted, louder than ever. I wanted to vomit. Next up, Dan from Florida. Dan, the calm one, stepped forward. Without hesitation, he sprinted and vaulted from ball to ball, landing flawlessly on the other side. "Impressive," the host called. "Bill from Idaho, you're next." Bill, the older man, ran too. He made it to the second ball before slipping. His screams echoed as he vanished, ending in the same sickening impact. Then it was me. I copied Dan's method. Running start, no hesitation. First ball, second, third, fourth. I barely landed on the platform, knees buckling. "Patrick from Florida, ladies and gentlemen," the host boomed. The crowd roared. I'd survived. The second challenge was announced. A test of endurance. Hang from a pull-up bar. Last man hanging wins. Simple, I thought, until the platform beneath us vanished. Below, a massive tank. At first, I thought it was water. Then the fins appeared. Sharks. I nearly let go in panic but tightened my grip. Dan beside me was sweating, shaking. Seconds crawled by. Then his hand slipped. He fell, screaming. His body hit the water. There was a splash, and then nothing but blood and thrashing shadows. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner," the voice cheered. Me. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I didn't even breathe. The voice returned. "What a performance. Patrick, you've earned our grand prize, $100,000. You may even return for our Tournament of Champions. Until then." Before I could protest, something jabbed my neck. Darkness took me again. I woke up in my bed. No signs of struggle. No bruises. Just silence. And a neatly stacked pile of cash on my nightstand. $100,000. Real. I haven't touched it. I don't go online anymore. I avoid dark web browsers. I unplug my router at night. But I can't help but wonder, when is the Tournament of Champions? And what happens if I don't show up? If you've made it to the end of this video, let me know in the comments which story creeped you out the most. And if you could survive only one of them, which one would it be? Don't forget to drop your guess. Which story do you think was the fake one? Also, if you enjoyed the episode, hit super thanks if you're on YouTube, or send us some stars if you're on Facebook to show some love and make your comments stand out. Want to go next level? Get early access to upcoming episodes, exclusive members-only content, and much more by joining our YouTube membership or becoming a Patreon supporter. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's waiting there for you. Don't forget to like, share, and catch up on our previous episodes. And now, stay tuned for the next horror episode